Kapila Vatsyayan is the director of the Indira Gandhi National Centre for the Arts in New Delhi. The centre is dedicated to the study and experience of all artistic forms, their interdependence and their relationship with nature and society. This experience is unique in the world. It is the first ever collection of scripts, documents, films and recordings relating to the various artistic expressions of India and other cultures. A lot of space has also been devoted to popular art and village art, which has been handed down through the centuries by word of mouth. No artistic area has been excluded or separated from the others. The centre has collected more than 100,000 slides, 90,000 books, and 10 million handwritten pages in Sanskrit, Pali, Persian and Arabic, which have never before been published. There are various collections of photographs, bought from private sources or from large institutions throughout the world. Numerous audio-visual recordings document the oral traditions of India's various cultural communities. This is perhaps the last chance to record techniques and knowledge that until now have only been transmitted orally and which are about to disappear because of the speed of the westernization process. The academics at the centre have carried out a lot of research in this field. These images, for example, document the martial arts of Orissa. The centre promotes awareness of the historical and cultural links between India and the other countries of Asia. One of the latest exhibitions was dedicated to drawings on rocks from the ancient world.
We have 64 arts, that is anything that is skill, from cooking to poetry reading or whatever is an art. So the simpler definitions of art are not so, that anything which is skillful and which makes a design which has symmetry, even if it is based on the principles of a symmetry, and has formal values which can be ascertained, can be called art. However, when you go into the deeper sources, you're in trouble. You're in great trouble. What constitutes art? Then is art something different from the act of meditation, contemplation, as we talked a little while ago in the context of Ellis Bonner, of the challenge to empty yourself? Is art not the first demand that art makes on you, is that you should transcend yourself, the small I in you? There can be no art if there is the I, and yet there can be no art unless there is the I to express it. Again, we are back to the question of the instrument, that the maker has to be annihilated, or the maker must realize that he is not. Because if the maker is in the center, there is no art. And unless there is a maker, there is no art. And therefore, I think all art that we recognize as art emerges again from this source of call it emptiness or fullness, it's the same thing. But certainly a moment where the small I or the ego, we're not talking either Freudian or Jungian psychology, this assertion of individuation has to be transcended. And then from that experience, everything that we call expression, and it can be expression ranging from what we call the sciences to metaphysics to artistic modes, this is a question of skill then. It is a question of the values that you give through a particular medium, architecture, sculpture, painting, music, words. But these are only parts. Its quintessence lies in when all this is gone. And that comes back to both its maker and to the receiver as manna from the heavens again.
Art in India has never been separated from the other aspects of life or from other disciplines, as is clear from the history of literature and archaeology. Each form of art can be clearly distinguished. It has an autonomous form, but it can only live if it is connected to the all. There were two main reference models for understanding physical phenomena: the rhythms of the universe, the mind and spirit of man, as integral parts of a single ecological system. The first model was the human body, in Sanskrit, Purusha. The body is made up of different systems, from the nervous system to the circulatory system to the digestive system, which are connected and interdependent. And the body unites matter and spirit, the physical and metaphysical aspects. The body is a microcosm that mirrors the macrocosm. The second model is the cartwheel, which is made up of a center, the hub, spokes, and a circumference. There is an internal center and an external movement towards multiplicity, which, however, is contained by the circle. The center symbolizes contemplation, individual introspection, liberation. The spokes represent active life, that is, controlled participation in desire, pleasure, knowledge, power, and duty. Time is cyclical, and the end is a return to the beginning. As in many other ancient civilizations, awareness of the outside world and knowledge of man's interior universe were intimately and mutually connected. In the Rig Veda, it is written, "There is only one truth, but it is expressed in many different ways." All of India's arts have been developed on the basis of this vision of the universe. The aesthetic experience comes from life, and it develops within its limits, but it tends towards the universal and the transcendental.
Tradition, again, etymologically and from the Latin roots to its Indian counterpart called parampara. And we must remember that in both these discourses in language, at no time has it been a static category. And tradition means passing on, as you know better than I do. And in parampara, it means a flow from one to the other. And that flow can never be a static flow, and it cannot be a fixed time thing. And the tradition can only be a tradition if there is an element and a concomitant element of continuity as also change in it. So that it has to flow along a certain path. The path is directionally it is made out, but on that path there is the flow continues and changes take place. In India, everything that we pride ourselves, which we call traditional, except for the recitation of the Vedas, which is immutable and which was perhaps exactly as it was when it was. Now, the interesting thing about India, and I think this is its secret, is that the tradition allows for change from within it. It allows also dissent within it, with the result that while changes take place, metamorphoses take place, there is no breaking from certain fundamental laws. So within those parameters, 1,000 or more permutations and combinations can be worked out. This is true especially in music. It is true in dance. It is true in certain forms of theatre, not all. But it is not true in Indian literature. Because the sensibility there has changed, or did change. We're coming back to it. The sensibility in Indian sculpture changed. While there was a continuity in the artisan tradition, in the modern urban artist who was individual, confronting, facing, challenging society, the tradition did not. So we have to make a distinction in each of these arts. What forms the ocean without the salt? What forms the cake without the sugar? Culture is that quintessence of the human being, singly or collectively, which is still with him when everything else is lost. You're from Europe. You know what happened to the prisoners of war in concentration camps on either side. I've had occasion to visit some of them. I have seen in my own family here people who had been to jail and who were persecuted, not because they were only people with idealism, but they were men of culture or women of culture, that at the greatest moments of stress, have you seen a poor man smile? A radiation which can come on his face? That is culture. Have you seen a person, a mother who may not have anything in terms of affluence, but what she can do to bring about a sense of beauty in the daughter that she is bringing up? And culture is not a matter of entertainment and luxury. And therefore, any new definitions of culture, which says that culture is also essential after economic development takes place, is a perversity. Culture, I think, is basic. And then you cannot distinguish it from everything that the human has which is given to him to refine his sensibilities and to create about an integral relationship of the body, mind and soul. That to me is culture.
Indian architecture, be it a temple or a modest home, always starts from a center and then expands outwards as a circle or a square. Every detail inside the building has individual characteristics, but it is never autonomous because every detail is an integral part of the whole. As a whole, the architecture represents the cosmic order of Earth, provoking a sense of wonder which brings about the transcendental experience of bliss. You move from the outside in, walking around the temple until you reach the center, which represents emptiness, void. The temples in the north and the south, the Buddhist stupa, and the mosques express the same transcendental significance and provoke the same profound experience. The artistic language is both universal and local, eternal and historical. Every image represents an abstract and impersonal state in a definite form, which evokes, at the same time, dynamism and peace. Every image is born from life. It is closely connected to the cultural fabric, and yet it transcends this. Buddha is Siddhartha, the ascetic Sakyamuni, but he is also the symbol of the compassion and grace of the Absolute. Every image of Buddha, be it Indian, Cambodian, Japanese, or Chinese, represents one of the countless subtle nuances in the vast ocean of compassion. The many faces and arms of the Hindu gods, in all their terrifying or peaceful aspects, represent the infinite artistic expressions of the intangible and interior experience of transcendental unity, which is without form and beyond all form. The patterns, styles, and clothing of the characters in the sculptures or bas-reliefs give them a historical and cultural identity. But the sublime aesthetic experience that they provoke, the rasa, goes beyond all cultural and national factors.
The word rasa can be translated in the English language by several words. Juice, fluid, taste, literally that which is the taste of a meal after you've had the meal, when you can no longer distinguish. At another level, now as metaphor, it is that ecstatic state of release, and rasa is that quintessence of the aesthetic experience, both from the point of view of the creator as also the receiver. The other level is in terms of the content of art into certain states of being or moods or predominant emotions, and these states are belonging to all human beings, or I would say all sentient beings in a way, because they are the states of love, of pathos, of valor, of anger, of hatred, of disgust, of fear, and ultimately of wonder, and the wonder then leading to a state of tranquility. Let's look at the piece of architecture, the Church of Chartres. There is a horizontal movement which is taking you from the outside to the inside. There is also a vertical movement which is taking you from the ground to the sky and the pinnacle. And after you have circumambulated or gone into the church nave or come out or seen the stained glass windows, what is it that it brings to your mind? A state of wonder, an absolute state of amazement. Then you don't forget, you forget all the small imagery, you forget the details, you even in a way forget the structure. But what remains is this state of wonder. You hear a great symphony, you hear Beethoven's Ninth, or you hear some of the compositions of Vivaldi or something. At the analytical stage, you're talking about sharp and flat notes, you're talking about the octaves, you're talking about his dealing with the 3 octaves, you're talking about counterpointing, you're talking about harmonics. At the end of the Ninth Symphony, especially after the 3rd movement, is there anything left except this great sense of wonder as to what Beethoven, or what it was, you don't even remember Beethoven. What is the residual echo inside your mind? And that's wonder. Dostoevsky said that beauty would save the world. There is the other English saying that beauty is in the eye of the beholder. And therefore, something that we have to get away from is that beauty is not confined only to outer form. And beauty is that perfect sense of symmetry, I would say, even if it is in geometrical terms, it may be asymmetrical, where the inner and the outer, and where the horizontal and the vertical, I'd go a step further, and where I would say that the micro represents the macro and the macro the micro. When that happens, there is this sense of beauty, a sense of beauty, a beauty which is contained in form, but which is beyond form. And I think this concern with beauty has been a concern, perennial concern of all artistic traditions. However, Greek art has articulated it, and Greek theory has articulated it much more pointedly. In India, at the explicit level, there isn't that concern with beauty qua beauty as a concept in aesthetic theories. This is my reading of it.